everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm super excited to have Jason Carne back on, and he's always doing something new, and I'm excited to have y'all learn about it if you haven't heard about it before, and then some other things that he's got going on. Super great craftsman, designer, letterer, but also amazing entrepreneur, so always think we can learn something from that. So Jason, thanks so much for being here today and being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Am I your only 3-time participant on Design Recharge? Do I hold the record so far?
I don't know. You may. Next week I have Megan D, and I know she's been on. It'll be her 3rd or 4th time, so you'll have to be on again to beat her out of it. Yeah. Right. Well, tell us, just in case somebody hasn't heard of you or seen you or whatever, tell us a little bit about your background, and then where your interest for lettering and then kind of antiquing kind of came about.
Well, I didn't start out lettering. I left high school as an architectural engineering major, so I never really intended to get into design when I left high school. But after a semester of that, I found out it wasn't for me because I'm not very good at math. I guess not past pre-calc anyway, just couldn't handle it. So I decided to come home and I started doing designs for my friends' bands, doing logos, album covers, MySpace layouts, the good old days in like 2006. And that's really, I think, where I started lettering, was doing those logos for those bands. And at first it was all like death metal bands and punk and hardcore, so it wasn't really at all what I'm doing now. But I think that kind of drew me to lettering even when I was younger, because I was always huge into music, so I would see like band logos and I'd be like, oh, that's awesome, and I would draw it in my sketchbook. I had more band logos in my sketchbook than actual notes in high school. That's just all I did. But yeah, I think that's really where my love of it started. But to where I started moving into like the older Victorian type, I think maybe looking at people's work like John Contino and those guys, I was just like, wow, that's kind of left of center what I see a lot of people. Like, everything's so modern and clean right now, but they're really doing like this dirty old style, and I really like it. And then I stumbled across work from people like David Smith, those really elaborate Victorian mirrors and everything, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is what I want to do. And for a long time, my work just sucked. It wasn't anywhere close to it. I was so mad at like everything I was doing. I was like, why can't I do that? But eventually it started coming together a little bit better and better, and now I'm to a point where I think my work's pretty cool, but I'm still like, man, you know, that's not good enough. I need to keep stepping it up. It really depends on how much time you get for projects, because recently I got somebody to come to me for a spirit label, and they're like, we really want this old Victorian style label, and it's a lot of the stuff like Keith Tatum, the type hunter, posts on his Instagram and his Pinterest, and it's really elaborate. But I haven't been able to do something like that yet because I've never had the amount of time to do it. Like, everybody's like, oh, we need it tomorrow, or we need it in 2 days, and
right.
I can't spend the 60 hours or 80 hours on it that I need to do.
Right.
So, I mean, eventually I'll get to that point to where I want to be, but I think it's just seeing other artists that are out on Behance and Dribbble and that are really doing this incredible work that really pushed me into what I'm doing now. And I think the antiquing is just kind of an extension of that. You know, I see these old things like Keith posts, and, you know, I go out and I see these oil cans or these old, you know, tobacco stuff, and it's just really great. Even like old pennants. I have like 100 old pennants that are just sitting on a shelf somewhere. Yeah, there's a bunch that are hanging up all around, but I don't even know how many more I have in the office somewhere. But I just go collect stuff all the time, and I mean, go to flea markets, don't go to antique stores, because you're going to end up spending way too much. Like, an antique shop will have like a tin for like $50, and you can go to a flea market and find it for like $3.
Right.
So go to the flea markets.
But it was always something that you were interested in. How long do you think you, I mean, did you go, like, did you get drug with your mom to things like that, or? No,
not really. Like, my mom and my dad really weren't antique-y at all. Like, they wanted, I'm trying to describe like my mom's style, like how she was, but she loved those pictures of like a beach, like with a chair just sitting on it, and like that totally like wasn't my style at all, but whatever, it was her thing. But my grandmother had tons of old tins and bottles and stuff all through her house, and I don't think she ever intended to have it like for the packaging or anything. I think she just thought of it as more of like, oh, this is old decoration, and like didn't really give it a second thought.
Right.
But one day I was looking at them, I'm like, man, that's really cool. Those illustrations are awesome. The colors are really cool, and like the type is incredible because everything now is just geometric, sans serif, like super simple, clean. Which ironically I just did a geometric sans serif. But yeah, I've been always drawn to the really old-looking stuff.
All right, so let's go on to this new, not really so new. I think you started it last year. What time of year and when? How did Lettering Library get? Tell us a little bit about it, and why did you want to create it, and why do you think it's important that we share these books, or you share these books?
Right. Well, I started. I launched the website in August of last year. But the idea for it started actually at Creative South last year when I was talking to Keith. I was like, I have all these books. I was like, you have all these books, because he has a pretty sizable collection too. And I was like, it's kind of just sitting on our shelves. Like, we pull one or two down for projects here and there, but it's not getting used by everybody. It kind of feels selfish for me to like keep it all to myself without like providing it as some sort of resource to everybody. Because there's very few of these books left. They're pretty scarce. They're really expensive if you want to buy the originals. Some of them I've paid, over $400 for. And
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it really is a lot. But
and there are not very many out there, so you got it and nobody else can see it.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, I was just hoarding all of this material and knowledge, and I felt kind of shitty, for lack of a better word, for doing that. I was like, I need to, let people have some sort of look into this. And at first I was going to do scans. I don't know if you're familiar with archive.org, but they have some old books where you can get for free, like certain PDFs and stuff. But the scan quality is kind of crappy, and, the color accuracy is pretty poor. And they're not as high resolution as the stuff that I'm doing, so I figured if I do photographs and I do it in like a studio setting where people feel like they're actually reading the books on their desks or their tables,
right,
that would seem like a little more personal and a little more intimate than just like a lifeless scan would. So instead I did the photography. The colors look much better, and I think you get a better feel for how the book actually lays out and everything like that. And so that's really what I wanted to do when I started. And now I'm going to hopefully be doing more than just books. I wanted to start taking photographs of all like the ephemera that I have around my office.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, stuff like business cards, bill heads, letterheads, even the pennants, packaging, and that can be just like freebies given out on the site.
That's
stuff
cool.
That's just a little bit extra because it only takes a little bit of time, but yeah, I wanted to originally do this for free, but realistically, I couldn't do it. It costs so much to get the books. It takes so much time to shoot every book and then edit all the photos and then compile them into a PDF, upload them onto the hosting site and make the pages. I mean, it takes a couple days at least to do this all out of every month. So I needed like a little bit of money just to keep it going and to keep it like worth my while too to send it out. But I think it's pretty fair and affordable where I have all the prices set now.
It's totally. So what I did was I joined, and then you get like 3 or 4 books a month, right?
$4 a month, yeah.
4 books a month, and you get every page of the book in a PDF format. And it is $10 a month. And we'll give you a link so that people can, but it's letteringlibrary.com. And I'll put it up there. They're saying that there's cricket sounds, and Melissa just left, and they're like, oh, did she leave to kill the cricket?
Everyone's hearing the crickets.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. It's all Dave's fault.
It's our frog's fault. He won't eat it.
Russ Pate said, oh, do you work in a bait shop?
It sounds like it sometimes. When I was still living in Jersey, we used to have this big cricket bin in the room for everything, and you'd hear like 500 crickets every night, and it sounded like you were in the bin. It was terrible. But now we have a basement, and the crickets can go down there. But every once in a while, my frog won't eat one, and that's what you hear.
Anyway, it's just funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was like, well, maybe it's somebody's chair. I don't know.
No.
But it's $10 every month. You get all those things, and it's a huge Yes, Jason, the cricket is real. Not Jason Carr and Jason Craig. The idea is to get it so that you can actually use these tools to do any kind of but I mean, a lot of the books they have small, so you can really zoom in because you did a photograph, and that's another big advantage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a PDF, the size that you can view like a full page at is only like 18% big. Like you can zoom in way more than your full screen and get right into those details, down to like little stippling and crosshatch line work and shadows and stuff like that. So you can get really, really in depth into what you see in there, as opposed to like a scan, which is just, people probably size it down for the web. I don't. Like each book is like 90 megabytes, so they're pretty huge files. But the good thing about it is that you don't, like me, have to lug it around in your backpack everywhere where you're going. These,
right.
10-pound books, you can just have them in your pocket on your tablet, your phone, laptop, whatever, and it's just a mobile library of inspiration. So I thought that was pretty convenient.
All right, so who uses Lettering Library, and how could someone use Lettering Library?
Most of the people are either lettering artists like myself, or they are older sign painters who have had these books in their shops when they were apprentices and stuff and want to revisit them and look at them again. But there's also a lot of students, people who are coming on to, I guess, learn or supplement their education. And there's been a pretty wide variety in age range. I mean, it's not like it's just like mostly younger guys or older women. It's both genders, all different age groups, and that's been pretty reassuring to see that there's all this interest across all these different generations for this kind of resource. So then
you've done it. You've used these books for lots of different kinds of projects. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, if somebody got a job, how they could use these?
Yeah, well, a lot of the times when I'm doing lettering work, they are coming to me because they do like something that looks older. And these books have really time-specific references. Like some books are, 20s, 30s, and they really sit right in that era with all the stuff that they're doing. So I can find authentic inspiration for that time period, and then I can apply that towards my designs. And people can really do the same thing. And a lot of these books are geographically specific too. Like some of them were written in Detroit, some were in Massachusetts, Ohio, and they all had their own specific style. So if you want to do something that looks like it's from Detroit from the 20s, I might have something like that, or Massachusetts from the 1880s. Mm-hmm. And you can really get hone in on the authenticity of your designs for that time period and location for the project you're doing, especially when it comes to like branding and things like that. If you want it to look like it was in the right neighborhood in the right city, and I think that's really useful.
Cool. So I'm going to pull up the image, like your Lettering Library main image, and then we're just going to click through some of these. You want to talk about some of the images that you sent me?
Yeah, sure.
It's coming.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is the title page from Strong's Book of Designs. This was, he was a Detroit sign painter in the early 1900s, late 1800s. And his books are some of the most sought after of all the sign painting books. He did this book, he has a show card book, and he has a whole Detroit School of Lettering set of pamphlets, which I've yet to be able to find. It's like 12 books, but I'd love to get my hands on those at some point. But he did these really awesome Nouveau illustrations, and his alphabets are really wild looking too, and they don't look like anybody else's. So his stuff is really specific and kind of eccentric, and a lot of people love it. It's on the American Sign Museum's top 25 books. I think it's the number 2 or 3 on their all-time list of books, like right behind the Atkinson's book and a couple, I think maybe the Henderson's books in front of it too. But it's one of the most famous sign painting books, and for good reason. Like obviously, like this is a beautiful color page, and there's many more throughout the book. And I think you actually have a close-up of this one, too, that I sent over. Oh. Somewhere.
But that's not it. Okay, I'll find it in a minute. But can you talk about this one?
Yeah, this is another awesome one where, it shows a lot of ornamental decoration and banners and borders and panels. And the actual lettering at the bottom is beautiful too. That cast shade from that Monroe or Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
I love that because you never see that anymore. Like you always see like the drop shadow or something like that, but that bending upwards and that cast shade, really cool. And just the detail and like those cross-hatched shadows and everything, that split shade is really cool. So this is exactly the type of lettering that I like and that influences my work. So I get excited when I get to share it with everybody else too through Lettering Library.
Cool.
This was one that I just got very recently. It's a 2-book set, and I was really happy that I found both of them at the same time because you never find things together. There's always like you get one, and then 3 years later you might find the other one, and it'll be in worse condition. But the same guy had both books. I guess it's been in his possession or his family's possession for a long time. But these were both printed in London, early 1900s, I think 1906 and 1907 between the two. And this one, the second book, has tons of just really killer layout ideas. It's full designs, you know, like bill heads and headers, and I would guess like signs that they would do on the windows, you know, like old gilded signs and things like that. It's all black and white. I mean, most of these books, being that they're so old, don't have color plates. That Strong's one's kind of an exception, but the actual work in it and the craftsmanship is incredible. And when you realize this is all done completely by hand, no extra tools, it's really wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this looks like it's a small book. Is it? How big is it? It is
pretty small. I mean, I've superimposed it onto like a fake wood background just for like presentation purposes. So don't go by like the wood grain size or anything like that. But it's, I would say that one's probably like 8x3 or so, something like that.
Wow.
7x3. So it is fairly small. But some of these I have are pretty big. Like some of them are like 18x12, and they take up like your whole desk. Like I have a neon sign book that's just massive. It's like way bigger than, you know, like most like tablets are. So when you put it on your desk, you have to clear everything off to look at it.
Right. Well, do you do anything to preserve these books?
I have done like some doctoring and repair to some of them that have like their covers blown off or like the split spines and hinges and things like that. But that's really about all I do because I want to keep them as original as possible. Like if I try to go in and like clean them up or like erase little marks that people made, I feel like it's kind of damaging the history of it or something. I like that it looks like they've been used and that somebody actually got some use out of them. So some of these books every once in a while will have a guy's like little like pencil sketch in the margins or something, and you can see how he tried to learn the letters or something like that. And I think it's pretty cool. And it doesn't actually affect the designs on the pages themselves. If it did that, then I'd try to like clear it up in Photoshop a little bit to make sure that you're not having anything obscured or anything. Right.
So what about this one?
That is Henderson Sign Painter. That is done by John J. Ominous, and it is a really, really hard one to find. Only like 2 of them have popped up in the last 4 or 5 years online. So if you see one, get one. And this one was actually within driving distance of me. It was about 40 minutes away at this town called Canadensis in Pennsylvania. And some guy said he just found it in an estate sale, and he's like, he was an old, I guess, like wallpaper and decorator, but sometimes those jobs crossed over with sign painters back in the day. They did it all. So I guess he just had this as reference, either for the decoration or for the lettering. I think it's probably more for the decoration. But this one has a bunch of cool color plates too. And it was printed actually in New Jersey, where I used to live, in Newark. So it wasn't very far away from where I was. So it's kind of got a home state cool factor to it for me too.
Yeah. I don't know when we get to the next thing. So this is kind of a, hey, here's some interior pages, a bunch of different of the books, kind of an overall.
Yeah, this was me just putting them all carefully onto the floor, making it look like it was randomized. But all the ones that you see in the background, like all the white popping through the books, that is actually a set of 40 different plates from Milton Bradley. They made a lettering alphabet box, and they had all these big cardboard pages in it. I don't know why a game maker would have that. I guess they were doing something else before they were making Monopoly and all the other games. But so that's what all that is. And then the rest is just a collection of some of my more prized possessions, like the Atkinson's one, the huge one, along with the Spencerian Compendium. Those are really, really sought after. Atkinson's pops up a lot, but it still goes for like 300 a pop. So it's pricey to get. And I've yet to do that one for Lettering Library just because it's like 370 pages and it's going to take me forever.
You could do it in part 1, part 2, part
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that. Where
that's a lot of pages.
Yeah, it really is. And that's pretty daunting. So is the other one that's kind of in the center. It says Basic Lettering. It has the yellow lettering on it. That's a book from W.A. Heberling, and that is really, really... it doesn't look as big as the Atkinson's, but there's probably over 300 pages in that one, too.
So, let's see. I can't remember what our next... Oh, so that's just kind of like the... what you created by hand, correct?
Yeah, I did that design for the header of the website, and I've used it kind of as a promotional tool as well, because it's kind of like, hey, here's a design that I did influenced by these books that you can buy. So that one took me quite a bit to do. It's probably one of my most complex hand-lettered designs, I guess. And
it's so tiny.
It is pretty fun. Yeah, it is really tiny.
Like, I didn't realize until you sent me this picture, because all the little type that's in the red or orange kind of red banners. I mean, look at your micron pins, and then look how tiny that is.
I mean, I think the original sketch was slightly bigger, but not by much, because this is like just a printout of it. But it was really small. I think I probably used the 005s or 003 to put the lettering in, which is...
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm starting to work a little bit bigger because it's getting a little crazy working that small. I've realized finally the error of my ways.
You're going to have jeweler's glasses, soon.
Yeah, I hope I don't need to use a magnifying glass on my work when I get a little bit older.
So one thing I think that these would be great for is university professors in like a typography course or an advanced typography course or a poster course or something, or even a history course, I guess. How do you think they could utilize it? What would you suggest?
Well, that's kind of like the big play that I'm hoping to do this year at some point. Now that I've built up, I want to say, like almost 30 books in the library available for sale, I do want to kind of push it to universities and colleges, because that's where I could get a lot more people doing this. So not only do I get more eyes on it, but it really helps monetize the business and help keep it rolling, I guess, so I can buy the more expensive ones. There's certain books that are out there that are about $3,000 to own. And, I'm not making enough off of this yet to really justify a purchase like that to put it in here. But if I can sell it to universities and I can be like, hey, here's a discount for your students. As students, you get it for $5 a month or $8 a month or something like that. Then we could get it to a couple hundred more people, and then I can start getting books like that. And I could start doing more books a month, possibly. I can maybe do 6 or 8. Maybe it would be something that takes up more time, and I can put a little bit of freelance work on the back burner so I can focus on this a bit more. I don't think I'd ever want it to replace all my work, but I'd like it to become a bigger part of what I do at some point. And I think it could be used for lessons and everything. I think this could be really valuable in the classroom for professors who want to have a look at something that is like authentically old without just having to go to like Google Images and pick apart like a page or two. You have a whole book to go off of, and you could be like, hey, look at pages 30 through 45 and find something you like and create a design based off of that and try to pick apart the nuances of this aesthetic for this time period and create your own design. So I think that's just one application of how you can use these books in a class setting.
So, and I really like that, and we've talked about like maybe creating some mock projects or putting some of the stuff that you've done. I know you've done some stuff for movies, things like that put it in a practical standpoint, and there's so much stuff that goes back to, they want that kind of retro feel or a revival of time period, and I think that's a great project. Do you think you'll ever do any kind of sample projects for professors like that?
I've considered doing a Skillshare class to where I do a whole project based off of using these books. So I think if I can show in a video like a class setting of what they would be doing, then it would be a lot more it would be easier for them to get their head around it, I guess, as opposed to me just sending an email like, hey, I have these books and you can use them sort of in some different way.
Right.
But if I show them like, hey, here's a 90-minute tutorial from start to finish on a project that you can just take and use for your students, then it would be, I guess, more enticing for them to kind of subscribe and get that into their classroom to use it as a tool.
Right. Right. I think it's great. So I'm all for you or professors using this for sure. All right. So why do you think it's important to look at authentic samples from history rather than just looking on Instagram or looking things like that? Because that would be, somebody would say, oh, well, I don't need to do that. Look at the history stuff. I can just look on Instagram.
I wouldn't fault somebody for just looking at stuff on Instagram or Google or things like that, because they are pretty useful tools, and sometimes you'll find something on there that you won't be able to find through my books. But I think that these books have such a mass of knowledge given at one point. Like, some of these books are a couple hundred pages. I mean, you could find literally hundreds of designs within a single book. Like the one that's actually right behind the Lettering Library sketch here, that blue and white one, that's Wagner's blueprint of sign painting. That's like 180 pages, and
Whoa.
Every single page has like, this is how you do the brush strokes, and this is how you do these letter styles at 2 inches, at 3 inches, and that's really, really cool. It's not just inspiration; it's actually like teaching you how to do things. A lot of these are instructional in nature, not just designs. So the Wagner one is easily one of the best for teaching somebody how to sign paint if they want to learn how to sign paint. And it was even used in the credits of the new sign painting documentary. I don't know if you've seen that documentary, but at the end credits they use that style for all their stuff, I guess, as a homage to that book, which is kind of nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to go back to some of the images, because I think right after this there were just a few more books.
Yeah, that's the neon book. That's the big guy. That's huge. This one.
What time period was this?
It was originally made in the 20s, so I guess like really early on for neon, because I don't know exactly when they started making neon signs, but I don't imagine it would be much earlier than that. But they wrote 2 books on this. Philip Delem wrote Part 1 and Part 2 in the 20s, but Part 2 was never released until it got re-released in this book in the 50s. For some reason, it just never went to the publisher. So this is the only way to get both books in one, and it has some really killer stuff in there. Not just the neon itself, but it shows you like the back and the electrical parts of it too. Like how to actually hook these things up and actually make them run mechanically, and that's kind of unique in these books. Mostly they just show a design or they tell you how to make something, but this one like really goes in depth to the mechanics of neon sign making. And it's one of the only neon books I've ever found. There's not many neon sign books.
All right, so what about this one? This one looks super old.
Yeah, that one's... It might not be as old as it looks, but it's by far the strangest book in my collection, I think. I think it was 1912, and it's a book that has monograms in French, Russian, Greek, and a few English ones. And it's really weird seeing some of those Cyrillic characters put into monograms, like in a really elaborate way. And what makes this extra strange is that every page is actually embossed. So all the monograms are raised off of the paper. They're not just flat pieces. They're on these thick cardstock with wax sheets over it, and it's really, really odd. This thing probably weighs like 20 pounds. It's a beast. It's huge.
Wow.
And I got really lucky with this one. I think I got it on eBay for like $80, and I've only seen one other one since, and it was like $600 or $700 it was going for.
So you can on the website buy. You don't have to buy the subscription. You can go in and buy an individual book, but it's
correct.
More better to your advantage, I guess, to do the subscription. So what if somebody starts today and they want a book that you did before? Like, can they do back months, or what happens with that? And I know that wasn't on our questions, so if you don't want to answer it, you can say, I choose not to answer that question.
No, that's fine. Yeah, most people, I would say like 90% of my customers are subscribers because they're getting 4 books every month delivered right to their inbox. They have to do nothing. It just comes to them on the 1st. And then they just download the zip file, and then they're on their desktop, and they're good to go. But some people choose to just select specific books, and most of those people that do that are people who are collectors like myself and are just missing a book or two from theirs and want to see what it is maybe and want to see if it's worth pursuing the actual physical copy. But it's a lot better for your money to just subscribe, because it's $10 a month for 4 books. That makes it $2.50 a book, which is pretty inexpensive. But some of these I have up there for 5 or 6. Some are even like $8 on their own, just because they're huge books. So if you subscribe,
but like, what if I missed a month?
Yeah, I've had some people ask me this, like they subscribe later on. Like I started in August, like I said, but some people started subscribing in November or December or even later, like last month. And they're like, hey, how do we get all the other books from the past months? And my answer is like, you could either buy them individually because the subscription doesn't work retroactively, or
right.
I would allow you to pay me directly, like as if you were a subscriber, back at that time if you wanted to cover all those months before. So I allow people to do that if they approach me directly. But for the most part, I think it would be unfair to give them all that content for free or for a discount when other people have already paid for it for all that time.
Right. Gotcha. Understandable, but good maybe question. All right, so that we have a few more images for books.
Yeah, that one you have up is the Spanier wood sign catalog. They're from New Jersey too, in Newark. They used to have a huge shop where they would manufacture these wood and metal letters, and inside there's so many cool images of actual wood signs and metal signs and stuff that's like hanging from like chains and lampposts. And these are all like real photographs of real signs done in this style. I'm not sure how they printed this or transferred the photos, because everything, it almost looks like on Photoshop where if you thresholded an image and it's just pure stark black and white. And that's the way a lot of the photos look. So it's an odd method of printing, but it looks really cool in person. And they're really hard to find, these Spanier books. Yeah, so this is just a sampling image that I did. It's just part of my bookshelf and a little bit of script that I threw over top.
It's a lot of books, Jason.
Yeah, it's only one shelf. There's many more shelves.
So
I have
this was
like 150 books at this point, I think.
Oh wow! So this was
at least, yeah.
This was this a 4-color process? Because it looks like I see dots.
That's what I'm assuming. I'm not as well versed in like printmaking and styles of print, so I couldn't say definitively.
You need a loop.
What's that?
You need a loop. You can look through it, and then you'll be able to see the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black if it's 4-color process. So
I've never heard of one of those. I need to buy one.
Yeah. Here,
Yeah, send me an Amazon link or something. I'll pick it up.
I got mine at $6.49 back in Auburn when I was an undergrad. So I'll put up a link to but then you'll be able to see. But that's what it looks like to me.
I see at least 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it would probably be more than 4 colors, maybe. I don't know.
We'll get you a loop.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going on the images.
The cricket questions are back.
Well, Jeremy came late. Yes, it's real cricket.
They're real. My frog won't eat them.
What's his name?
My frog?
Yes, not the
Pixel.
cricket. Pixel. What's his name? Pixel.
Yeah, Pixel the Pixie frog.
So, what is this one?
This is for a company I just did a bunch of work for called Rickshaw Bagworks Company out of San Francisco, California. And I don't know if any of you have seen this, but they had a Kickstarter campaign last year for their amazing reflective tweed. And it was this material that reflects light at night. So if somebody's wearing a backpack or a messenger bag or something, it will actually reflect and show them, that somebody's there if they're wearing something dark colored. And it's like, it was mostly as like a safety element, but fashion-wise, it looks really cool too. And they approached me to do this little patch that they're going to sew onto all their pieces. And they also hired me to do 4 different T-shirt designs. There's going to be a sign hung in their shop. And he actually sent me a custom bag with my logo sewn on, which was really awesome. He sent me a free $200 bag. Like, no client does that. That was really cool of him.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah,
So
and there's Mark right there. He's got, that's my bag that's up there, and then the packages that I sent him. I sent out a poster and some shirts to trade with him.
let's see if I can get this one up here.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's a poster I did a while back for Warpaint Press. My good friend Shane Stiles started a poster company where he was releasing one like every month or every couple weeks, I believe. And now he's rolling that into a company called HyperGiant Industries. He's a new screen printer in Florida. He used to work for Threadbird. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Threadbird. But he started his own business now, and he's doing really cool stuff over there. So yeah, I decided to send that poster out to Mark in exchange for all the stuff that he's sending me, and I sent him a couple T-shirts. And he's just been a really cool guy, and he's been really laid back, and he really knows what he wants for everything. He's just like the dream client to have. So if everybody could take a little advice from Mark on how to be an awesome client, that would be great.
So you did his brand logo, or you did just the reflective tweed
logo.
Thing? Okay.
No, that's just him just holding a box that I sent over. I did a little script on the box. But that's the custom bag that he did for me, and it's awesome. I just got it in the mail the other day, and it's killer in person. He even sewed my logo onto it.
Oh, so, that's cool.
Yeah, he customized it just for me, which is really nice.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to Lettering Library for a second, and then we're going to get into some of your other stuff. But, all right, so my dad's an attorney, so I always think of everything in legal terms. I think I sent you this question, as soon as you were doing Lettering Library. Are you how are you dealing with copyright and things like that? So I know you get a lot of questions. What kind of questions do you get, and how have you dealt with them?
I don't know if any of you were on this group on Facebook called the Sign Painters Support Group, but recently a discussion came up about Lettering Library and the legality of actually posting these books online, and selling them. It's not a reproduction, like in a physical sense, so it's not technically like breaking any copyright rules or anything like that. And as long as it's over 70 years old, it's fair use. So it's in the Creative Commons, and you can kind of do what you want with it. So I'm trying to stay with these older books, but a lot of the times people were saying that the rights to these books could be bought out by other companies and reproduced at later dates, and that I might be in some kind of a gray area legally. But what I'm trying to do is, if anybody takes any issue with it, like if they want to file like a C&D letter with me, I'll gladly take it down, or I'll gladly pay any kind of like repercussions to them if they feel like that they were damaged in any way. But most of these companies are long since gone. Like the publishing rights have never been transferred. But there's a few, like the Speedball books that I've been posting. Some people were concerned about that because Speedball is still a company. So, like, you should probably get in touch with them and just see if it's cool if you use them. I mean, like, a lot of them are out of copyright because, like, in the 20s and the 30s. But they're like, it would just be nice to send a message to them, and I agree, and I should probably do that with them and companies like Sign of the Times magazine. They may own some of the rights to the really old ones, so I have to just double check with them on that. But I think what I'm doing is I'm not trying to like make a profit off of other people's work. Like that's kind of like secondary to everything else. It's just that I'm trying to like send this out as a resource to other people who would never be able to see it otherwise. But I need to make a little bit of money for my time doing it, which is the only reason I'm charging. Like archive.org, like that place I mentioned before, they do give it to you for free, but I mean they're salaried employees who are getting paid to put these up on the internet. Like they're still getting money in a sense. Like it's just not through the books. Like that's why they can afford to offer it for free. Like this is taking up a pretty good chunk of my time, like at the end of every month. So I just want to be compensated, in a little bit, little way. You
do have to account for, hosting fees, things like that that go. But it's not like you're making a ton of money off of this. But it's paying for your hobby, and you're not planning on stopping designing and just doing this full time.
No, I mean it's a way to, yes, host, pay for the hosting and the actual website itself, but it's also a way to ensure that I can keep getting these books and bringing them to people. Like if I was just paying out of my own pocket every month and doing it for free, I'd kind of like run the well dry after a while and not be able to get these books because they are a couple $100 a piece sometimes.
Right.
So I'd say like more than half of the money every month goes back into buying new books. So it's kind of like my subscribers are kind of like covering their own interest too by making sure there's an endless supply of these books to keep streaming into their inbox every month.
Right. So, talk a little bit about how many do you purchase a month?
Over last summer, I was purchasing a real lot. Like right before we launched, I was getting probably like 10 a month, which is a lot for some of these. I mean, not all of them are a couple $100 a piece. Sometimes I snag one for $20, $30. But I would say on average, they're at least $60 to $80. So I was spending a couple $100 a month. And I'd say now I'm probably slowing down to 3 or 4 a month. And I'm trying to pick stuff that's a little bit different because a lot of the books that I have cover somewhat similar content. Like you can only have so many books that are just about alphabets. Like after a while it's going to repeat content. And people are going to be like, oh, this is kind of like what I got in the book last month. I don't really know if I want to keep going with this. So everything that I'm getting now is stuff that's a little bit more unique or specialized or has something that other books don't. So I think that's why I'm slowing down the book buying, just because it's harder to find these more interesting titles.
So it's not exactly a passive income because you're still having to do stuff and you're having to do, but once you get it up, then it can be kind of a passive income source. I know you've worked on some other things. What other passive income sources have you been starting?
Well, just yesterday I launched my first typeface called Skyward. It was a typeface with 8 different styles to it. Had sans serif and serif options, both with inlines and oblique inlines. And it was a pretty big undertaking. It took almost like 5 months to do this. I started it in, I want to say, like mid-November. And after Christmas, I was done with designing all the character sets, and I approached Drew Melton, who a lot of you probably know as another lettering designer from Behance and Dribble and everywhere else. And he's really, really talented. He's been producing his own typefaces for the better part of a year now, I want to say. And so I had him actually take all of my characters that I designed into a program called Glyphs, which is a Mac-only program that produces fonts. And you could really fine-tune the kerning and the tracking and everything in that program. And he did a tremendous job of bringing it to life and making it into an actual usable typeface. So between me and him working together over the last 3 months, we kerned it, we rekerned it, we printed it out, and we tested it at a bunch of different sizes, and we plan on going even more in depth with this as we move along. We want to try different styles, like an outline and a textured version, a drop shadow version. So there's going to be a lot of work going into this over the next year as well, because there's going to be different weights of it too. It's not just going to be this set standard weight right here. We're going to have a bold and we're going to have a light. So it's a huge undertaking, much more than I thought it would be when I started doing this. At first I just did uppercase, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I'm going to do that and the numbers and basic punctuation. And then I started getting more and more into it, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll do lowercase. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do all the other special characters. And then Drew's like, well, you might as well do the accents. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. So I just did them all. And so there's over 300 characters in every face. So wow, it's a lot.
That's awesome. And so people can get that right here, skywardfont.com.
Yes.
And I'm going to hopefully paste that in. So Levi had a question about kind of, it's in the realm of lettering library as well as kind of finding books and stuff like that. And so he wanted to know what kind of, when you go type hunting, do you always buy it, or do you, if you see something with just awesome type, do you take a picture of it just for reference later? Do you have ever anything that you don't really get the whole book because it's just a couple things, or do you always just buy it?
Well, with books, I usually almost always will buy it, just because I'm buying them online and I can't really gauge the whole book by just a couple of pages. So I take a chance on it. But if I'm in a store and I see something, I'm more inclined to not purchase them sometimes. Like I've been to a store called Oaknall Press a bunch of times
Mm-hmm.
in Delaware, and they sell a lot of books related to sign painting and old print making. Like they have books on letterpress and screen printing and all sorts of early different prints like lithographs and intaglio and all that stuff. And sometimes the books aren't that great. I mean, they'll have like 3 or 4 cool pages up front, and then it's just like this repetitious like stuff that I've seen over and over, and I'm like, it's not really worth the $150 or $200. But when it comes to actual like antiques, I typically only take photos of them just because I'm kind of out of space in my office and I can't put them anywhere anymore. And a lot of the times they're overpriced too. I feel like people are really taking advantage of the interest in old type right now.
Mm-hmm.
So like all these different tins and packaging containers, I mean, some of them are like $40, $50, and they're just not worth that much. I'm sure you can find them for a couple bucks at a flea market somewhere and save yourself a lot of money. So a lot of times I'll just take a photo if it's something that's not book related.
Right. So how big are the images? Dion wants to know that, and I think that's a great question.
When I started out, the images were massive. They were like 5,700 pixels wide. And they were so huge that it was getting difficult for people to download those file sizes onto mobile devices and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've shrunk them a little bit. They're now like 3,500 pixels wide, so they're still pretty huge. And you can really still get in there and see the details, but it shrunk the file size by like 2/3. So now instead of getting a zip file that's like 300 megabytes at the end of the month, you're getting something that's like 70 megabytes or somewhere in that realm.
So, back to kind of the other passive income sources.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of hurdles have you had to go through, or have you gone through that we could learn from when you're considering launching a product or creating like a subscription-based product?
I would say make sure you dedicate more time to it than you think you'll need, because you will need a lot more time than you originally plan on doing. Just getting the subscription service set up for Lettering Library took a couple weeks. I had Jeff Finley from Go Media recommend me a site called Gumroad to host all my products on,
Mm-hmm.
that I've been using, and I'm pretty happy with how it works. But to actually get it to look right on my website, I wanted it to where it wouldn't kick you off my website to Gumroad, and I wanted to make sure that it would still look like I wanted it to look on Lettering Library, that it wouldn't change the aesthetic or the appearance and the experience of buying through my website. And that was really challenging and took a lot of time because I'm not a developer. I don't really do that kind of stuff very often. So you're going to have to, there's like a learning curve to everything. It's not going to be as easy as you think it'll be to just, get going with something. And I learned that with the typeface too, that, it's going to take quite a while to get it going. And even when you're done with it, actually preparing it and getting it ready for presentation and everything, that took almost a week. I mean, every different website has different size images that you can post on it, from Creative Market to fonts.com to
Right.
your own website to Dribbble to Behance. So you're taking all these images and resizing them and optimizing them for each different thing, and it's going to take you a while. So I would just say make sure you're willing to dedicate a decent chunk of time to the project before you set out to do it. And if you can, set aside other projects to really dedicate yourself to it, give it the attention that it needs. Because Skyward, if I did it over again, this font, I would probably try to push it out a little bit sooner than I did. Because we were letting it go in between our freelance work. Drew and I are both freelancers, and we both have a lot of other projects to maintain while we're doing this. So it always got kind of pushed to the back burner, like, oh, okay, we'll get to it next week or 3 days
Mm-hmm.
from now. And I think we could have realistically probably had this done in February, and it would have been nice to have an extra month of this income stream coming in, and we would have already been on fonts.com and MyFonts. We're still in the process of getting set up there because there's an application process and a review board that has to check out for quality and make sure you have all the right characters and that you're not missing anything. But that should be up pretty soon, and I'm hoping that brings in a pretty decent chunk of sales. They have almost 4 million unique visitors a year. So that's a lot of eyes that could potentially be on this. And
Definitely.
And this is something that could turn into really great passive income at some point. Because I've been looking to supplement my freelance income with something else. Because freelance, as everybody knows, whoever has done freelance before, is nothing's guaranteed, nothing's steady. So you have to make sure that you have something coming in that's somewhat steady. So Lettering Library is doing that for me, where I have consistent subscribers every month. And I'm hoping that this typeface release, coupled with a couple other ideas that I have, like textures, Photoshop actions, will just bring in a little bit extra every month that can cover a bill or two. And then I can, pick and choose my projects a little bit more freelance-wise, which is nice. I don't have to take on everything to cover, all the bills that I have to pay every month. I could just be like, well, I don't really need to do this T-shirt that I don't want to do right now because I have this covering it.
Right. So why do you think it's important to so when people are buying a font, I asked Maddox this when I had him on, and I really do think that you shouldn't share typefaces because you sign an agreement saying you're not going to. But why do you think it's important that people really pay typographers for their work?
Well, I mean, there's no way around avoiding the fact that it's going to happen to some degree anyway. Like it just does, like whether it's with movies or music or anything, like it will get shared. And it's kind of a bummer that they won't support the type designers, but it does happen a lot. I see it even among like designers that I'm friends with, like, hey, can you send me over like this one from like Hoffler or, and I'm like, man, like just pay for it. I was like, you're going to get it back through that project anyway, or just tack it onto the bill. Like in all of my agreements that I send to my clients, my proposals, I was like, any typeface design that needs to be purchased will be added on to the total cost. And they all usually agree to that. They're like, okay, this is a great typeface for my project and I'll pay for it. And then you support the type designer, you get a little extra money from the project, and it all works out. And I think people don't realize how much time goes into a typeface. Like, I've literally spent like hours looking at just like a crossbar on an A or an H and been like, I don't know if that should be like 2 pixels higher or should I make it just a little bit thinner, like 10% thinner. And it will really take a lot of time for a type designer to settle on something and actually put it out. And I think it's only fair to compensate people for the time. Like everybody buys their brushes, everybody buys, the texture packs and everything like that. And for some reason, people just don't want to seem to pay for type. But it's one of the biggest parts of like any design you do, whether it's a print ad or it's a website. I mean, it is like really important to have good type, and I think people should be willing to pay for that. But
definitely,
I can't change everybody's mind.
Well, and I think some people don't think about it. They're like, oh, those people are dead that made that typeface. They think, oh, well, they're not going to get the money anyway. But there's somebody owns that, and you should still pay for it. So let's go back to Rickshaw for a second because it was kind of stuck in the middle, and I'm sorry I was out of order.
Don't worry about it.
But this is kind of typically how you work, right?
Yeah, I always just start with some pencil sketches like most people do, and then I work with refining it until I get it to a certain decent point with my pencil sketch, and then I'll send it over and be like, hey, am I good to ink this? And once I get approval on that, then I'll just ink it all up, take it into Photoshop, scan it, color it, texture it, and but this is always the most satisfying part of what I do is the ink drawing. It's the middle process. Like after you finish the design, you're like, man, that feels good to get that done. Because everything else after that is digital, and digital is not my favorite thing to do. Because you kind of like lose a little bit of the human element when you're doing stuff like that. But I try to add it back in when I create my own textures. Like I'll throw salt on the scanning bed, or I'll throw sandpaper on there and just rough it up a little bit. So I still try to make everything as, I guess, I want to say like tactile, like to where it feels like it's been manipulated analog and not so much digital. But this was a really fun design to do, and I love when somebody lets me go a little wild with detail and make it a little bit more ornate than my standard work. So this was definitely one of the more fun designs I've done so far in 2015, I think.
So here's one that you did that's pretty ornate that has to do with the pretty little lady sitting behind you.
Yep, I got engaged January 2nd to my fiance Melissa, sitting back there. And I did this as a little designed for right before we went on a trip out to California, and I just wanted to make it as elaborate as possible because I never get to work on personal projects anymore, and I wanted to do something fun that I actually wanted to do. So this is a representation of projects I'd like to take on. So give me your elaborate signs and print ads, and I will do them for you.
I think that's cool that you took the time to do something like that, of what you would love to do in a personal project. I think that's great. Yeah. And then here is her beautiful ring.
Yep, there it is. Blue diamond.
It's really big.
Yeah, the lady's not traditional at all. She didn't want like a clear diamond, and I'm kind of glad she didn't, because
it's beautiful.
I love the color on it.
Jason Craig just said married with crickets.
That's right.
So, do you have any like hope to? Do you want, after you did Skyward, do you want to do any more typefaces, or are you done with them?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to do a few more, and this is one that's kind of in the works right now.
Oops.
I have this, and then I have a version of it without like all the spurs and spikes on it, so that's just a little bit more clean Roman looking.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, again, kind of influenced from those Victorian sign painters where they had those fancy little bowl terminals and swashes and curls in their letters. And there doesn't seem to be many typefaces out there like this that are done really well. Like LHF, letterhead fonts, does some stuff that looks really nice. But a lot of the times I'm not satisfied with a few of their characters, like either the round ones or characters with like their slants, like the A's and the N's and the W's and things like that. They all just like don't look quite right to me. So I wanted to make something that I can use personally and also sell at the same time, you know. And
right.
I think this is something that I'd get a lot of use out of because I do lettering styles like this a lot when I'm hand sketching. So if I can just set this out, it would save me a lot of time when I'm just setting up a preliminary sketch for a client. I'm like, hey, this is sort of like what I want to do for this, like something like it. And then I could go ahead and customize it for their project. But to have something like this just on hand would be really handy for me.
Well, that's cool. All right, so I know you used to do a lot of T-shirt designs, and I think you still do some T-shirt designs. Are there any other areas that you would like to work in?
Yeah, I definitely want to move more into packaging and labels this year, if I can. I'm under NDA to not really talk about certain projects, but I am in the midst of doing a spirit label, which I'm really excited about because it's my first one that I know is going to production. I've done some wine labels in the past for a company in California, but they were all with companies that weren't yet established, and they were just kind of testing the waters. And I guess funding ran out, and they just never made it. So I've done 4 labels that I think are some of my best work, but I can never show. And you know, it's kind of a bummer that I can't get those awesome product shots and put in my portfolio. But this company is one that's tried and true, and will definitely go ahead and see it through all the way to production, which is going to be exciting. But I also want to do, you know, like food packaging or, you know, other beverage labels like beer cans or something like that. Like I love that project that Derek Castle did, the Miller one. That was really cool. I think Contino did something too, and maybe Brandon Reich. I forget who the 3 were that did it. But that's like really exciting projects, and it allows you to think differently about the surface that you're creating on. T-shirts and posters, they're all flat, but to be able to do something that's rounded or like goes over an edge or something like that makes you think in a new light and a new perspective on a project that I've never really gotten to do before. So I just kind of want the chance to do it. So I've been considering making like a bottle of my own as like a sample to send to art directors and other companies and be like, hey, here's something that I could do for you. And hopefully they would get in touch with me and hire me. And that's worked out tremendously well for Chad Michael. I don't know if anybody is familiar with his work, but he does great stuff. And he did a custom bottle with a beauty box, and he sent it to these art directors. And since he's been doing awesome work. So I think if you just put in that work beforehand, you'll probably, you know, get a pretty decent result out of it.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything else that you're doing in your business to try to increase your exposure and maybe anything that you're doing trying to improve productivity? I mean, because working bigger can't be faster.
No. I think what I'm trying to do now is slow down on work quantity, because over the past couple months I've been pushing out so many projects, a lot of which I still can't show yet because they're in production, but I've been doing like 6 to 7 designs a week, which was unusually high for me because a lot of my stuff is pretty detailed, and it is all done by hand. It is all custom, so it's not something I can just type out or pull a vector from and use. So it does take me a decent amount of time, so I want to slow down and make sure that I'm producing a better quality product and that I'm not rushing through anything. So right now I have 2 branding projects. I'm working on a wooden boombox, which is going to be really cool. And I have 2 or 3 other projects that I can't really discuss that I'm working on, but they're all spread out over a decent amount of time now, so it's not like I'm really cramped in and have to be like, man, I got to get this logo done in 2 days, 3 days. Like, they're more open-ended and they're a little bit more free. And I talked to a company yesterday called Crew. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of them, but they approached me and called me and said that the basis of their company is that you bring them work that you can't take on, and they will pair that project with a designer that will fit that project, and you get 5% of the total cost of the project. So as a referral fee for doing nothing, for just passing it along to this website, you're going to get 5% back. So that could be another way of generating some sort of passive income. It's just forwarding these projects that I can't take through this website and like filtering those things that I can't handle or can't take on.
That's cool. So why, kind of going back to Rickshaw, like now that you're able to have some of these longer projects, and thanks for answering Russ's question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Anyway, that's why I just got to stick to the script here. I read things and I get off track. They make me laugh, though. Being able to have longer projects and being able to commit more time and maybe charge more instead of having such fast things, it also has to do with these clients that you can have over and over. Instead of just a one-time thing, it's like these building long-lasting relationships. So can you talk a little bit about why that's important for you and how you've done that?
Yeah, most of my freelance career has been with projects that are kind of one-offs, like, you know, somebody will come to me for a T-shirt or for like business cards, or kind of like a stationery package, and then I never really hear from them again. And I mean, there's no problem with that, with just doing one-offs. But if you build a relationship with a client that is willing to pay fair rates and has, you know, a good idea of what they want all the time, then it's paramount to try to like keep that relationship intact and to try to keep working with them. Like this Rickshaw Bags company originally just came to me for one T-shirt design. They wanted me to just do something that they can do for like their shop shirts, I guess, for their employees, and they might have printed it on a like a tote bag or something like that. And I was like, okay, I could do that. And after the first one went through, he really loved it, and he's like, man, we have this other tagline, we have these other things that I think you could really do something with. So it snowballed into 4 T-shirt designs and a design for their signage, and then we did something that's going to go on tote bags. We did a patch. So we did all this different stuff, and as a result of that, you know, we kind of built almost like a friendship between the client and myself. And he's a guy who is running a great company that's succeeding, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And to kind of be along for the ride on the way up and getting in to a company that is willing to give you this kind of creative freedom is amazing. And I mean, he sent me like a free bag. He's sending me all these free T-shirts, and I sent him these posters and these shirts. And so we're kind of like trading the stuff that has nothing to do with the actual work itself and building more than just like a client-artist relationship. We're trying to build like a friendship almost, and something that we can keep coming back to and revisiting. And like, it's not just this impersonal encounter, you know, it's something that, right, you know, we're getting like a little bit more like at the heart of what each other wants to do, and it's not just like, you know, oh, okay, fix this, do this, and like, okay, here's your money and you're done, gone, bye. And I don't really like those projects. I like something where somebody can actually just jump on the phone with me for 10 minutes and just talk about it, or talk about nothing, you know. Right. It's kind of nice to have that relationship to where it's not all about the money or all about the design. And if you sustain those kind of relationships, they usually come back to you like tenfold. When I was working with Sevenly, they gave me a design. They just wanted one design, and they're like, your design sold really well, and we really liked what you did and how fast you turned it around. How would you like to do a design per week, like indefinitely, kind of, until we say no? And I was like, yeah, sure. So that was steady money, which is rare as a freelancer, like I was saying. And they were paying me like $500 a week to produce these shirts, and that was just nice extra side money to have there. So if you can get a steady client, and if you can nurture that relationship and let it grow, then you're going to make more money, and you're going to make better relationships, and you're going to get better referrals too, which I think is also really important. Those clients are definitely going to pass your name along to everybody else that needs to design work.
I also think they see you as a team member. They see you as part of their company, and I think when you can get to that level, they don't. When I'm in class and I'm telling students, I'm like, you talk about it like it's we, because then they don't think of you as just some freelancer. They think of you as a team member, and you're trying to make their business grow, and that's, I think young designers don't get that. Sometimes they don't. That heat under their belt, I guess, they're like, well, these people have to make money. I just want to make, I want them to pay me. And I create a project that they get it. They have to sell, they have to create a product and have to think about the marketing that goes with it, and they have to market it, and then we have an art sale, and they have to sell 10 to get an A. And if you don't sell all 10, then you don't get an A for sure. Yeah. And they're all like, oh no, and it puts the pressure on them. But that's exactly how our clients feel. Like if we don't help them make money, then they're not going to come use us. So I think being that team player is really critical.
Yeah, they're not going to come back to you if what you did for them didn't make them anything. So you got to always put your best foot forward. Like, I'm not going to name names here, but I've had some clients come to me and be like, we hired this designer off Dribbble or Behance, and like the work that he did for us doesn't look at all like what he has in his portfolio. It's like really not good. And they would show it to me, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe so-and-so really did this. Like that they didn't really put any effort into it. And a lot of times people will do that to like startup companies or smaller companies who they feel like, oh, they're not as important as my big clients. Don't do that. Don't ever do that to anybody. That's really shitty. You have to like treat every client as if they're the same size and as if they have the same goals and needs, because you want to deliver your best work to them just as they want you to do it for them. Because why would you want to create something that doesn't belong in your portfolio or that you can't kind of share along and that you're not proud of? Like, I don't get that mentality of not putting your best foot forward.
Right. Meredith's glad she didn't have to have that project. Meredith, you would have done great at that project. You would have done something crafty, and people would have liked it. But I think when you put it into perspective of, hey, like sometimes a client will want something that's not really best for them, and I think if you can't sit down and say, and I think younger designers have a hard time saying this, like, why will they believe me? And I'm like, well, how much money have you spent on your education? Think about it like that, for you, you've studied how many hours, and you've got to say, well, I don't know if this would be best because to get your word out. Let's try this. Like I was passing by today. Somebody was selling hot tubs, and it looked like a drain, but it was a flat, it was like from above hot tub. I'm like, that's not going to sell the hot tub. Like, if that was me, I mean, it looked like a drain, like a claw. I mean, it was terrible. And I was like, why would that designer have let that go forward? And that's the stuff that we need to be able to step up and say, and that's when you become a team player, I think, when you say, hey, you know what, this doesn't look like what, this is not going to sell. We need to sell people in a hot tub, not, oh, here is the plastic, whatever, fiberglass thing.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, a lot of younger designers are afraid to mention things like that. They don't want to, they fear losing the project or losing the client, especially if they're freelance, because they're like, oh, I need this money. I can't not have this project, and I need to pay my electric or my rent or something like that. And so people are afraid to say, no, I won't do that, or that this isn't a good idea and that you should really pursue a different path, and like, here's your other options. But that's really important, and I try to stress that to a lot of people. I'm like, you know, you're the artist. They're coming to you because they trust and like the work that you do. If you're not kind of putting your best input in and telling them, like, you know, this isn't going to work out, because they're going to be upset later on. They're like, well, why didn't you tell me? It's not selling. It doesn't look, you know, quite as good as we thought it would, and it's not as good as the stuff in your portfolio. You can't just be like, oh, well, you didn't, you know, want to do what I wanted to do, so I just gave you crap. You know,
right.
You got to be able to at least try to push your expertise onto them a little bit. Sean McCabe, like, I think of him as a friend, and I think he's really talented, but I don't particularly agree with his method. He says that as a professional, you're just supposed to provide them a design, and they're supposed to either take it or leave it. And I mean, I get that mentality because, like, yes, like, design-wise, you probably do know more than them, and, like, you are a little bit more experienced. You have a better eye for it. But I think they should be involved in some way. I mean, they are paying you. It is their company. They may know their customers a little bit better than you.
Yep.
And I think there needs to be some kind of communication and, I guess, give from both sides. And just, like, be like, here, this is what you get, and you're done. You know, pay me. You know, that's all you have. And I don't really agree with that at all. But I think that as long as you're involving the client somewhat and making them feel like their input is valued, that you're going to come up with a great final project.
I agree. I think you have to respect them, because a lot of times they will know their audience better than you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they need to be able to step out and see how regular people to get new clients maybe are going to see it. But I think respecting them and having them part of that creative process is really important.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Jason, we're out of time. We're a little over, so thank you so much for staying over. I'm going to share all your links over here. So letteringlibrary.com, Skyward, W-A-R-D, font.com, jasoncarne.com, and on Instagram, you're at Jason Carne, and on Dribbble, you're at Jason Carne.
Yep.
Yeah, same thing. And then if you guys want to follow me, a bunch of different ways to get me is at Design Recharge on Twitter or Instagram. Facebook, there's Bitly to sign up for the newsletter. And if you want to follow the channel on YouTube, there it is too. But and you can always email me at diane@designrecharge.org. And next week is Megan D. Duncan, and she's going to be talking about collage. She's a designer, but she does all these awesome collages as exploration, so it's good to get your hands dirty, I think, as you would agree, Jason.
Yes.
Definitely. So, but Jason, thanks again. I always enjoy talking to you, and I don't hear the cricket anymore, so I'm a little worried. We were part of hearing his last tune, but...
Yeah, there might be another one in there just hiding now. I don't know. I have to find out after we're done.
Well, but thank you so much. And next week we'll see you same time. And Jason, again, thank you so much. You're awesome. You're super inspiring. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right. See y'all next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you later.